Conversation with our candidates for governor. I want to extend a special welcome to the candidates who are with us today, and in alphabetical order, they are Ken Block, Helena Folks, Jay Gatra, and Aaron Gukian. We very much appreciate all of you taking the time in your busy schedules to join us today and to devote some time in this campaign to our young children and families. I will note that all candidates who qualified for the ballot as a candidate for governor of Rhode Island were invited to participate in this nonpartisan event. We also have some other elected officials with us today, and I'm probably going to leave someone else, so I apologize, but I saw our senator for this site, Senator Jake Basilian here. I saw Rep. Marianne Shawcross-Smith here, and I saw Mayor Rivera here from Central Falls. If there's anyone else I left out, I apologize. I also see our Assistant Director of Childcare, Nicole Ciello, from Department of Human Services with us. So thank you all for being here. We just gave each of our candidates tours of this site, but for everyone in this room, so you know, at our Berkshire site here, we have 8 early learning classrooms for 3- and 4-year-olds. And they include Head Start classrooms, state pre-K classrooms, and child care classrooms. We also have family visiting services, mental health services, along with health and nutrition services, including a WIC office for families. What's really important about Children's Friend Berkshire is that it is a 5-star rated site from, as rated by Bright Stars as an early learning site. Quality ranking available, and it means that everything that goes on here, from the teachers with the kids in the classrooms, to the support and the professional development for the teachers, to the communication and the support to families, to the facilities, everything is high quality. That's what every family deserves, and we know that is what makes a lasting positive impact and gives positive returns to society. As an organization, Children's Friend is proud of its rich history serving vulnerable children and families in Rhode Island. Our 192-year history and our work today in 12 sites providing early childhood services to over 21,000 individuals a year drives us to advocate for policies, for programs, and for funding that support our youngest and our most vulnerable. Our partners today at Right From the Start, a coalition of 8 organizations that work to advance state policies and to help ensure that babies and our young children get off to the right start in life, regardless of family income, race, ethnicity, immigration, or zip code. We know what it takes to give children the nurturing support they need as they experience the most rapid period of development in their lives. As Dr. Jack Shonkoff from the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard University tells us, the foundations of lifelong health are built in early childhood. And we have all seen the devastating impacts when a child falls through the cracks or a family doesn't get the support that they need. And research from Nobel economist James Heckman documents that high-quality interventions in early childhood have immense impacts, not only on the child served, but on their children too. So yes, what is happening in our classrooms downstairs right now will provide at least 2 generations of impact. That's pretty awesome. So each day, we seek to empower families with tools and resources that they need to be successful and to thrive. But that is limited sometimes to the investment that our elected officials make. And so while we are thrilled of investments that Rhode Island currently makes in our youngest and our most vulnerable, and some of these things include state funding for Head Start and for pre-K and for family visiting, a robust newborn screening and follow-up program, a refundable child tax credit, early intervention program, and right care health insurance. So there's many things that we are proud of, but we know that there is much more that can be done to ensure that all children achieve their full potential in our state. How do we make childcare more affordable to all families, regardless of income? How do we rebuild and stabilize our early childhood workforce? How do we better prevent child abuse and neglect instead of responding after it happens? When we fail to act, the consequences fall on the most vulnerable, our children. They deserve more than our concern. We're here today because they deserve action. And I look forward to hearing from the candidates who are here today about their plans to make Rhode Island the best place to be a child and to raise a family. And now, I am pleased to introduce our moderator today, Ian Donis, who is a political reporter for Ocean State Media. Ian has reported on Rhode Island politics since back to 1999, I believe, and we are grateful to have a skilled journalist and a political expert with us to lead this important conversation. Welcome, Ian.
So much, David. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Children's Friend for organizing this forum, and thank you to the candidates. I'd like to briefly touch on the format, which was organized by Children's Friend. We will, and Children's Friend also determine the sequence of candidates. So we will go through each of the 4 candidates. They will give a 3-minute opening statement, and then they will have up to 2 minutes to answer each of 4 questions. So our first candidate is Jay Gotra, and I believe I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
You're doing a great job.
Fantastic. Come on up. Up to 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. How are we all doing today? Great. My name is Jay Gotra, and I'm going to be the next governor of Rhode Island. But anyways, the reason I am here, okay, the reason I said that and the reason I laughed is because at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. You understand? What I do, where I am, who I am, it's all irrelevant to where we are today. You understand? We are here in a place, this place that has been around for 190 years. A place that has been around before any one of us were even here. Okay? A place that has been serving this community way longer than we even knew some of the things we know today. The way of life, how we live. Okay? And when I see all the hard work and effort everyone here is putting in, the speech that I brought didn't make sense anymore. You understand? Because when I come here and I see what's going on, it connected me on a personal level. A place that, quite candidly, I probably wouldn't have shared without that door. Okay? I'm an immigrant. I moved to this country at the age of 14. I relied on these social services programs, the lunches, the after-school programs. And guess what? I'm a prime example that if you see a person who's provided safety while he grows, he can do amazing things. By that support from the community, I was able to create 1,000 jobs, over 1,000 jobs in the state of Rhode Island. I was able to create $1 billion of value for citizens of Rhode Island. And I was able to do that because of the support that people like you provided to me years ago when I first came to this country. And then the saddest thing that I heard through all my tour, right, being real and sharing feelings, was that we are still in fear. I remember going to my mother when I was 15, 16, saying, "Mom, I want to go to this after-school program," or "I want to go to this event." And we were completely legal, but she'd say, "Let's not get involved." Involved in what? To have community. But that's how much fear still lives. When I walk around and that fear is still there, we have to do something meaningful, and we have to do something bigger and more important. What you guys do, provide the foundation, okay, of what we're building in Rhode Island. And I'm all in. I don't care what my title is, I'm all in for this purpose, and I'll be here, and you'll see more of me. That's it.
Jay, you mentioned the fear and uncertainty about funding for these vital services. There's a lot of that in this current moment for crucial programs like WIC, the nutrition program, and Head Start, the education program. If you're elected governor and funding suddenly vanishes for programs like that, what would you do to prepare the state to respond?
I mean, that's a lot of questions that I'll answer one quickly at a time, right? First things first, this is not a choice. Providing for children should not be a choice. It shouldn't be something you have to go every year and fight for as if it's something you're asking for that's so unreasonable. We're spending $15 billion, okay? These guys are asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars to make change, to make impact. This shouldn't be something that we have to argue to get. This should be something that's awarded and given, right? And at the end of the day, I will do whatever I can as governor to fight for the rights for children. And I don't care what I have to do. If I have to go to private sector to raise capital by begging, pleading, and making sure they're funded, I will figure out a way to make sure they have the resources they need.
Baltimore ranks Rhode Island as one of the most expensive states for child care. The cost for many families exceeds the cost of housing. Rhode Island makes only the minimum investment in child care required to meet the match for federal funds. What would your administration, how would your administration address the cost of child care for Rhode Island families?
By cutting waste. I mean, we spend so much money in places we don't need to spend and take away from essential services that are needed to support us. And then as we are spending more money, creating more inflation, that hurts all of us, okay? And we have to come up with smart, intelligent ways, okay, to look at fundamentally how, as a community, we're functioning. And we have to do whatever we can to reduce cost of spending in places that are not necessary and start putting that money into creating affordability for the normal Americans.
Jay,
Okay.
let me jump in there. We all are against waste and fraud. We all know that Rhode Island's state budget has grown by billions of dollars over time. Can you offer some specifics on what you would do, where you would cut to eliminate waste and fraud, or how you would cut spending?
I'm glad you asked that, Ian, because quite candidly, that's a question for the employees of Rhode Island. When I talk to people that work for the state of Rhode Island, every person will point me into 3 to 5 things they can make change in, that are small change, that they believe is being spent money in a place that shouldn't be. When you're trying to solve a big problem of funding, bloated budgets, it's not a one-person problem, and it is not one person to solve that. It's us coming together as community, giving empowerment back to the employees of Rhode Island that are working here, and giving them abilities and empowerment to make smart decisions that reduce costs that we have to deal with.
According to Children's Friend, the current state budget marks the first time that Rhode Island will fully exhaust the federal match for family home visiting programs, which offer important support for young children and parents. This money has been left on the table for many years. How will you ensure that Rhode Island is taking full advantage of the federal match for these kinds of programs?
Well, first things first, you know what? We could always argue and fight against each other, but the fact that our officials did that, let's give them a hand for that. Finally, they actually filled the budget all the way through, okay? That's good, okay? We're finally moving in the right direction, but now we need to take that to the next step, right? We need to turn that into permanent programs, not these things that we're doing, which is going back and consistently fighting every year for a chance to survive and have this duel on, where should this money go? It shouldn't even be a choice, especially when it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars that we take care of.
Okay. Advocates say Rhode Island lacks the workforce for early childhood education and care. What would you do to better develop that workforce?
Housing. Create more affordable housing. Create specialty programs that give teachers, firefighters chances to buy those houses before corporations can buy them, okay? And provide stability, so they want to come and stay. I mean, we have people that live here, that are already here, that work in other states, because we're not providing the opportunities here. We need to focus on making those opportunities better. The reason we don't have staff is because even at social welfare, right, if somebody wants to come and support these social causes, they have a cost of living of their own. So if we're providing even the people that are supporting here with minimum to low wages just because they're in social service work, they don't have a choice. It doesn't matter how much you want to support somebody. If you can't support your own family, there isn't much you can do for others.
You talk about making housing more available to working Rhode Islanders and not necessarily investors. How would you make that happen?
Create policies, okay? 90 days that individuals that live in Rhode Island have opportunities to buy new homes that we build, okay? Before it opens up to the world, before it opens up to out-of-state residents, okay? There are awesome, cool things we can do to protect and keep people in the state of Rhode Island. We have just not been thinking in the most creative ways possible, okay? And we are not taking advantage of all the opportunity that exists out there. We have 1 million intelligent people in this state almost, okay? And we can rely on them to make a lot of cool things if the governor is just willing to be open and listen to beautiful suggestions that can come from our people.
Independent candidate for governor, Jay Gotra, thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Block. Ken, you have up to 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We all know that funding programs like these, funding social services programs in general, is difficult. And we know that the budget years that are coming are going to be a little bit tougher than they've been in the past. I'd like to take a few minutes talking about how we can position ourselves to be better than we are right now. And for all of the good work that happens in this building and buildings all around the state, in too many school districts, we are taking well-prepared children and putting them through a system that is turning out at the other end, by 12th grade, students who by and large substantially underperform. And when I say substantially in Providence, more than 75% of the graduates are not on grade, and many of them are substantially undergrade. That is our problem. A third of our state is on Medicaid. A third of our budget, $5 billion, is devoted to Medicaid. That's a problem, right? We are out of balance. And I look at the educational system, in many of the educational system, and it's not just our urban districts. Warwick substantially underperforms. It makes no sense. We have to do better. We have a moral imperative to do better when it comes to education. I'm married to an educator, and she comes home in tears some days because she is an academic support, and some of the children that she is trying to help can't be helped, and it frustrates her. And it is a problem here that has been here for decades. We all know it. We know the truth of it, and nobody has tackled this problem. Nobody has sat down all of the people who are involved in educating our children and hammered out what we are going to do to change it. We cannot keep doing what we are doing. It is killing us. It's very hard to remediate when an educational outcome is bad. We have to make sure the educational outcomes are better. That is the purpose of government. That is what there's a whole bunch of things I have to focus on as governor, but I am telling you that, thank you, that's very helpful. I am telling you for sure that if we don't get our hands around and work out how we are educating our most at-risk individuals, we will never break the cycle of poverty. We have to break it. My goal is to make sure that fewer people need your services.
Quick follow-up, Ken. You're exactly right. We've heard talk and rhetoric for decades about the need to improve underperforming public schools in Rhode Island, and the situation has barely changed. What would you do differently to address that?
So we need every adult involved in the education of children. I mean, every adult. Parents, teachers, administrators, RIDE, everybody. And we need to get them in a room. We need the unions as well. And we have to work out policy changes, broad-based policy changes that will put us on a better track. We can't nibble around the edges. Many blue states have suffered the problems that we suffer from here with education, and they have fixed them over time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have a whole menu of things that we can taste, and we need to consider them. We need to figure out what is palatable to everybody, and we need to move. But the inertia that we suffer from when it comes to our educational struggles is awful. It is a lack of political courage. It is a lack of urgency, right? I love what you do. And I just am beside myself that it isn't solving the problem. We have to attack the problem. We have to get at it. And I would probably bring everybody into a room and lock the door and just give them bread and water until we come up with a plan.
Bread and water. Okay, let's say you're elected governor and federal funding jeopardizes the funding and eligibility for vital programs like WIC and Head Start. What would you do to prepare the state to respond?
So, dealing with declining federal funds is it's going to be a real, it's going to be a likely outcome for us, I'm pretty sure. We all recognize that. So the answer for me really is the $5 billion that we're spending on Medicaid. Is every dime, every dollar, every program achieving its purpose? I don't think anybody really knows. I've talked to a lot of smart people all year so far. And when we talk about Medicaid and I ask, where's all the money going? Everyone kind of goes, not really sure. So understanding where the money is going, reallocating money if there are programs that aren't working well, and moving it into programs that do work well. And I assure you, I believe that all of the early educational efforts that we're talking about work. So we need to fund them. We need to fully fund every match that's available. And as best as I can figure out on a yearly basis, we leave hundreds of millions of dollars on the table because we are not fully funding and taking advantage of the federal match across all programs. And that's just ridiculous, and we need to do way better than that.
The high cost of child care is a burden for many Rhode Island families. Child care workers make not so great wages, to put it diplomatically. What would you do to address that?
Yeah, these are the challenges, right? Almost every question focuses on the budget, and I get it, right? Because we can't do what we do without the funding to cover it. The governor is a bit limited in controlling the fate of what the final budget looks like. The governors will propose a budget, and we lob it over to the legislature, and really nobody knows with any certainty what's going to come out the other end. And I think that makes life hard it makes life hard for everybody who's trying to do programs like yours. You don't have budget certainty. You don't have a reliable funding source. You can't even really do your planning because you don't know what the outcome is going to be until the very last week of the session. And when you do find it out, there's no ability to change the course of whatever it's going to be because the legislature is just going to vote on it, and that's all there is to it. We need a better way of budgeting in general. I believe a governor's line item veto doesn't solve the problem of certainty that you have here right now, but it is a way to take some waste out of the budget and hopefully reapportion the money to more worthwhile things. The biggest challenge we have is our economy is slowing down, businesses are leaving, and the need is growing. And it's hard to work that all out. The next governor has to do a whole bunch of things at the same time. Got to fix the educational system, has to get the economy working again, got to stop the bridges from falling down, we have to stop building billion-dollar computer systems that don't work. I'm out of here, right? It just laid out almost an impossible agenda. But it has to happen. We need to tackle all of those things at once. And what I plan on doing on Medicaid is, in particular, evaluating the programs and somewhere in that $5 billion, finding the money we need for the most meritorious programs that we have.
Give me a quick response, Ken, if you would, on how you mentioned line item veto. The Democratic-controlled legislature has zero or little interest in creating a line item veto if you're elected as an independent governor. How would you bring that about?
So the governor has a tool that no other elected official has, or they certainly don't use to their advantage, and that's the bully pulpit. We've had governors who you barely hear from. I won't be one of them. I'm planning on holding a weekly press conference, and whatever my priorities are that aren't getting anywhere, we're going to talk about it over and over and over again. The bully pulpit works. I've gotten hard things done using the bully pulpit. We got rid of the master lever here in 2012, largely because we talked about it and we got citizens engaged, and we got people to the legislature.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit earlier about the federal match. This is a vital source of programs like the home visiting program in Rhode Island. How will you ensure that Rhode Island is getting every federal matching dollar that it's able to?
Yeah, several parts. First of all, you have to identify all the programs, find out how much money we are short by, and working with legislative leadership early in the budget cycle to make sure that we put the money in that we have to put in against those programs, because to spend small dollars to get big dollars is just smart policy, and we need to be way smarter about how we manage our budgets than we are right now.
Last question for you, Ken Block. Here at Children's Friends, several classrooms can't get filled because of a lack of qualified early education workers. How would you address that issue?
Yeah, it's workforce challenges are directly linked to educational outcomes to a large degree. We need more educated graduates on grade so that they can go on to get their bachelor's, to do some of the jobs that you require a bachelor's for here. All of these programs and all of these problems are in fact interrelated, and they're incredibly difficult to solve. And you don't want to lower your standards, so we need more graduates, we need more people willing to go in, and we frankly need to pay them a living wage to do the work, and we're not doing that right now.
All right, independent candidate for governor, Ken Block, thank you. Next up is Democratic candidate for governor, Helena Fotes. Helena, you have up to 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much. That was the best start of my day in a very long time. God, I actually sort of fell out of my car with my coffee cup, and I was picking stuff off the sidewalk, and I was reminding myself of what I felt like when I was dropping my children off at daycare. My kids, I have 4 kids. My kids are now ages 27 to 32. I just became a grandmother this year. So I thought a lot about my baby granddaughter when I was in the classroom. She's now 7 months, and I can't think of any more important investment than our children. And I just want to thank all the elected officials who are working so hard on this. I love the vision that David laid out at the beginning, and David, thank you for all you do, to be the best state in the country for our children and parents and caregivers. Wouldn't that be amazing? You know, it breaks my heart when I think about places like Mississippi starting to beat us in certain components of taking care of children. It shouldn't be. We can do much, much better. And I just want to thank all of you who do this incredibly hard work. I'm the oldest of 5 children. 2 of my sisters are teachers. And I say to them every day, like, God bless you, I could not do what you do. But I do love those little kids. So there's a lot to be done. There are 3 things that I just wanted to talk about specifically to make sure that you know that I'm very supportive of these things. We talked about it in one of the classrooms. The idea that we are one of only 8 states in the country where there's a child support enforcement program in place before women can get access to daycare is ridiculous, and you can be certain that that will be eliminated when I am governor of that. It's just complete bondage of women from men who have abandoned their responsibilities and we're holding the women and children responsible. So that I think is outrageous. I want to thank the people in this room who've worked so hard on paid family leave. But we can do better. We should be a state where we have 12 weeks of paid family leave. You know, I watched my own daughter just now. She works for a very generous company, had 6 months of paid family leave, and what a blessing. So I think that's very important. And then I really want to talk more about raising Medicaid reimbursement rates, because that's a huge part of what's going on here. We talked about dental care. The governor just missed an opportunity to raise Medicaid by almost $70 million and get a $126 million match. Think about what we could be doing with those funds. We're talking about 50,000 here, 500,000 there. There's big money we're leaving on the table,
Okay.
and I'm very dedicated to this work.
Alina, quick follow-up on that. Where would you find this money to put more toward Medicaid?
Well, you know, you talk about like a 2-to-1 match on this. This is a huge opportunity. And look, we are a state where our spending is up 40% over 4 years ago. And I say to people all the time, do you feel 40% better? We've doubled our investment in bridges and roads from $446 million 5 years ago to $1 billion last year. And we have the worst bridges and roads in the country. So I think we needed a little oversight of the big departments that are spending a lot of money. I called for Peter Alviti to be fired the day I got in the office.
Thank you.
And that's one place I'd be looking.
As you know, there's a lot of uncertainty about possible and ongoing changes coming from Washington
Yeah.
in funding and eligibility for programs like WIC and Head Start.
Yep.
If you win the election in November, how will you prepare the state for sudden changes that could cut into
Yeah.
services?
Well, I remember last fall when SNAP benefits were cut with the government shutdown. We were a little slow out of the gate as a state, if you recall, and I went to a lot of food drives during that period. Incredible generosity of the private sector. But you look at Connecticut and Massachusetts, their rainy day funds are in the billions of dollars. We got a couple $100 million in a rainy day fund. So that's why you have a rainy day fund, is when a moment like this happens, and this guy, Trump, is a catastrophe. I tell people all the time, this is why elections matter. And people get it now, but we got 2 more years of him. So we do have to prepare for that. And there's no easy answer, but in the moment, we just have to take care of it. And I can't think of a better investment than Head Start.
Speaking of investments and costs, we are familiar with the high cost of childcare.
Yep.
How would you address that if you were governor?
So I think I've told some people, but I'll tell all of you, one of the gifts of my last 4 years is just I've been meeting people all over the state. And I've been listening, and I've been asking people, you know, tell me one thing you would do if you were the next governor. I remember an amazing group of child caregivers I met with. It was about a month or 2 ago. And it was so interesting. You know, first of all, there was this real desire for dignity, to be respected, to be appreciated, and I think that's incredibly important. It's not sufficient, but it is important. We also live in a state where there's a huge disparity in income amongst, and it's usually women doing these jobs. And you know, so many child caregivers are essentially making just a little bit more than they could make at Dunkin' Donuts. That's not right. How is it that in our state, a pre-K teacher is making $30,000 less than what a kindergarten teacher makes? And we have other issues too. We're a state where starting teachers in our state could make $20,000 more just to go to Connecticut or Massachusetts. That's true of healthcare providers. That's why dentists have left. That's a Medicaid-related issue. So there is a lot to fix. And by the way,
How would you fix it?
well, first I gotta win, and I just want to say, I am the only Democrat who is here today. There is another Democrat in this race. I appreciate all you guys for coming, but I am focused on the Democratic primary. And I would very much love your support. There's a lot to be done. And this governor is now 50th most popular governor in the country because we are struggling under his watch. The Rhode Island Democratic Party chose not to endorse for a very important reason.
All right, we're getting a little off topic.
I know, but I just got to get it out there.
David DiCaprio said at the outset, Democratic Governor Dan McKee was invited. Governor McKee was invited. The candidates who are here today are the ones who responded. So, Helena,
Thank you, Ian.
As I asked your fellow candidates, Children's Friend says this is the first year that the current budget is the first time that Rhode Island has exhausted its funds to get the federal match for home visiting services. How will you ensure that Rhode Island is making the most of getting federal matching dollars?
One of the things I'm interested in is what Maura Healey has done, I think, pretty recently in Massachusetts. She has one person dedicated on her team to maximizing federal match across all agencies, and I think that's a really smart idea. because this is not the only place I hear we're missing a match. And when you have a budget crisis, you want to maximize the money we're getting out of the federal administration. So that's my specific idea on that.
Here in Rhode Island, we often struggle with issues over many years: public education, workforce development, early childhood education, the workforce for that. How would you address that if it has not been addressed up to this point?
In terms of
Developing more qualified early childhood workers.
yeah, well, I mean, look, we got to go back to dignity and wages, you know, and I agree with the point that's made. Housing is the #1 issue I hear in this state. There's not a single city or town in Rhode Island where a family making $100,000 a year could afford to buy a home right now. So it's very, very hard to be in this sector, thank goodness for all of you, and do the work you're doing and afford to live in this state. So I am dedicated to building 20,000 new housing units, using the millionaire's tax to pay for that. It's the most important thing I hear everywhere I go. Young people, people in your field are leaving this state. They're getting priced out.
What about the early childhood?
And early
workforce?
childhood that's connected to it. I want to make a big investment in career and technical education. This is what parents want for their children. And by the way, a lot of those fields where we talk about career and technical are, I'm going to call them male dominated. And that's great. I want more plumbers and electricians, and I really want more women in those fields. But I also want us to be training the fields that young girls want to be in. And I want more young boys in this field. And so I'm not being sort of gender prescriptive here, but let's face it. We live in a world where the sectors that women dominate are paid at a much lower rate. And we really have to step back and think about that too.
Democratic candidate for governor, Helena Folks. Our final candidate today is Republican Aaron Gukian. Aaron, you have up to 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Good morning. Good morning. I see a lot of friends in the audience. My father's here. He's actually a retired Local 51 plumber, and my mom's a retired respiratory therapist. So I grew up with people on the front lines. I say we're a state of twos: too many taxes, too many fees, too many speed cameras, and it's all too much. I'm going to tell you a quick story because I'm a problem solver. And 3 years ago or about there, I became the executive director of the Rhode Island Dental Association. And the person that hired me, Dr. Greg Stepka, who does all the screenings in Providence, called me. He was almost crying. And he's not a guy that cries. He said, Aaron, I am seeing these children and their teeth are like falling out. And if you can't chew, you can't eat. So I got to work, and I got the data from an intern from my town. She actually had to come home from Connecticut College, where I went to school. And she took a gap year because her mother wasn't doing so well. She was sick. And so we worked together with one other full-time employee. We got the data. And ultimately, we started to advocate. And I started to work with the Attorney General, Peter Nerona, and Keith Hoffman was actually running. And I said, hey, if you can find any fine dollars or anything that happens, could you please tell me? And they kept that in play. Then I decided, okay, how can I try to fix this? And I called up Colgate. Colgate has a program, Colgate Bright Smiles, Bright Futures. It's a free program. And I worked with the superintendent of Providence and the commissioner. We got it all signed up, and that free program is available. And it teaches oral health habits. It provides toothpaste and toothbrushes and different things. Then I worked again with this Providence Schools and Providence Career and Technical Academy, and lo and behold, I got an oral health career pathway at Juanita Sanchez High School. So the young women and men can go there, get the prerequisites to go to the Community College of Rhode Island, which is the only hygiene school, accredited hygiene school in the state, because we don't have enough hygienists and dental assistants. So that's happening, and East Providence actually already has a great one. And then, as we kept advocating, we passed legislation, and the senator here and his mentor, the late Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, who I knew personally, and the speaker, we got all together and we started to work on policies. We passed significant legislation in regards to reimbursement. So they're going over years 23, 24, and 25. And on or before October 2026, the Health Insurance Commissioner has to report to the General Assembly what that true dental loss ratio is. I beg you to call your legislators and please say.
Aaron, you time up for that for your opening statement.
Okay.
Thank you. If you're elected governor and there's a sudden loss of funding and eligibility for programs like WIC and Head Start, how will you prepare the state to respond?
So Rhode Island Works Smarter is my initiative where you work directly with the frontline and union workers. When they find savings in fixed systems, they get a revenue share to incentivize them. The rest lowers taxes and fees, powered by modern technology, and there's a 24/7, 365 anonymous idea portal. So you can put your ideas in, it's process improvement. By doing this and working with frontline workers like my dad, my mom, and everyone out there, you can put your ideas in there and you can get rewarded. And by doing that and lowering taxes and fees, so let's say if you're a consultant, you come in and you save $100,000, you usually get the 5 to 10%. Why don't we just work and give that to the Rhode Island talent? And the rest will lower taxes and fees, and then we can start advocating. We can show that we got our house in order, and then we also have skin in the game. We can start to match those dollars. Let's not forget, our budget's $15 billion. Delaware is $7 billion for about 1 million people. New Hampshire's $8 billion, which is, they do it over 2 years, $16 billion. Massachusetts spends $10 billion per million. So why are we such an outlier? And one of the things that Ken talked about was Medicaid, and he's an expert in that type of field. But the bottom line is modern technology can do so many of those things. And as long as we monitor it and do it humanely, this is from the ground up rather than the top down.
The high cost of childcare, the low wages for childcare workers, how would you address that?
Again, if we do Rhode Island Works Smarter, and I'm a music teacher, right? I taught for a couple of years. I don't currently do it. I used to always say crisscross applesauce as I walk in. And I worked with many communities, Fragile X, and autism, and different things. But the bottom line is, how do you get some dollars into the communities that matter? You have to do a complete analysis, and once you find a lot of bloat that we have, we can then put it to work. And I think another thing is no one's listening. Helena made a great point of that. She's going around, we're all going around. And I think if we all get together, I used to say to my dentists and hygienists and dental assistants, I shouldn't say mine, but the whole group, after we had something to eat, I'd say, don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do. And once we start with that, even if, let's just say Jake and I disagree on 90% of the things, which isn't true, the senator, we could sit down and we could say, what is that 10%? Let's start there. But, relationships matter. We all have good friendships. We're all a big family. And, I think that's the most important thing is to get to work.
In terms of qualifying for the federal match of dollars, how would you make sure that Rhode Island is making the most of that?
Yeah, I think we've hammered that. I think if we just do an analysis, again, if you lean into modern technology and do the analysis, I think it will happen very quickly. I think that you can then work with the federal government and the state and also the federal delegation to just get together. I mean, the great news about this state is you can get the federal delegation and the governor and whoever else probably in a room in 20 minutes if they're in the state. And that's one of the things I don't think we leverage enough is our nimbleness. A lot of times we get in the way of each other, but I have so much hope. And I know a lot of people in here that provide the hope. And a lot of times it's just there's so much negative energy. But if we try to start being positive and start to communicate more and listen, then I think we can really change the future.
Advocates say that Rhode Island lacks the workforce to have a robust early child care system, particularly for infants and toddlers. If you're elected governor, how would you address that?
Well, 3 things. I think, 1, these career pathways and making sure that everyone's on the same page. 2nd, I think these great tours, I think if we did it with all our universities and we just did this as much as possible to get them integrated. And 3, I think that, and I want to do this with doctors specifically, is let's just say we've saved some money, right? And we give let's say a doctor that has $500,000 worth of debt, you could put that across any sort of credited person, is that you could do $50,000 a year, right? And every year that they stay, they get $50,000 down on their debt. So let's just say you work with Brown University in their medical school, or the teachers, the same thing, or nurses. And I think if we provide those types of things, and then we work with the Rhode Island Foundation, I worked there for 5 years, I raised millions in charity with the great Neil Steinberg. It's a $1.5 billion asset, all for charitable purposes, and there's so many scholarships there, specifically nursing. And I don't think enough people know about it, so I really implore that you go onto that website and actually call, especially if you have college kids. And I have 3 daughters. So I'm very in there, 15, 17, and 23, so I'm aware of that process.
Republican candidate for governor, Aaron Kuchar.
Thank you. Thanks to the candidates, to all public servants.
Thank you much to our candidates who are here today, Jay Gotra, Ken Block, Alina Folks, and Aaron Kukian. We're going to go to some closing remarks from David Caprio.
Thank you, Ian. That was awesome. He's amazing, and we appreciate that so much. This isn't so much closing remark for me. This is fixing the CEO screw-up. So earlier, before the candidates were going to speak, our kids made something special for you that I was supposed to introduce them and have them come in. So thankfully they stuck around. And come on, Miss Tess, we're going to bring our kids in and have